You cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. But it's up to you if that impact is going to be a positive one or a negative one. That quote was said by Dr. Jane Goodall, who passed away a few days ago, depending on when you're listening to this episode. But Dr. Goodall, Jane, she is one of the most remarkable people that I think has ever lived on earth in the history of man. The impact she had, the changes she made, the people she inspired, the generations she inspired, the animals she saved, the habitat she saved, the villages she saved. She truly lived one of the most incredible lives any human could ever live. And what an inspiration for everybody to be able to have the opportunity to learn from her. Her big thing was hope. She had a podcast called the Hopecast. But in this episode, this emergency Make It to Midnight episode, we're going to dive into Dr. Jane Goodall's story. And hopefully you can find even just 10% of the amount of hope that I found from watching her documentary on YouTube and then reading about her as I was researching, because I think we all knew about her when you see the videos of, or if you don't know her, you've probably seen the video of the blonde-headed lady with the chimps in the wild, and they recognize her, they love her, they hug her. That's Dr. Jane Goodall. But her whole story and how she got there and what she did once she got there is something that the whole entire world needs to hear. They need to teach about Dr. Goodall in school. Everybody needs to know about Dr. Jane Goodall. And that's what I'm here to do today. Tell you all about her in as quick amount of time as I can, because I think this is important. Maybe the most important episode we've ever done. I Make It to Midnight. This is episode 22, and this is the episode of Dr. Jane Goodall. So who is Jane? She was born in London in 1934. She was fascinated by animals from the start. She would always walk around with a stuffed chimp everywhere. When she was 10 years old, she said she wants to go live in Africa. She wants to go live with the chimps, with the monkeys, and she wants to do research. Now remember, she's born in 1934, so she's born, even though it's Great Britain, she's born Great Depression, grows up in World War II era and all of that. So this is also a time where women were not necessarily encouraged to go chase after these big dreams, especially a lofty dream like this. And there was another hurdle Jane had to cross, and that was that she couldn't afford university. So after high school, that was kind of it for her. So what did she do? She said her dream was to go to Tanzania and live with these monkeys, and that's exactly what she worked to do. She trained as a secretary, then she was a waitress and saved up as much as she could. And then finally, she got a one-way ticket to Kenya, I believe, to visit a friend, and that is where her life changed. She met Louis Leakey, who was a legendary anthropologist, and Leakey was he was the one that found out that human origin did not begin in Asia or Europe. It actually began in Africa. So he's a massive factor in the anthropology of human history. And he took a liking to Jane from the jump. He noticed how curious she was. He noticed how great her memory was. He noticed all of these intangibles about her that would never be taught in a school, that you can never learn about somebody on a resume. And he said, you know what? I think she'll be perfect, because he wanted to study chimpanzees because of how similar they were to humans. But obviously he had a lot on his plate. So he brought Jane in, and the rest is history. She lived in the Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania to study these chimps, to learn about them. And she made the groundbreaking discovery that chimps are actually using tools, and that humans were not the first one, or were not the only people using tools or knew how to use tools. And this is where it gets amazing. I wish I had a better vocabulary so I could put it into words how incredible her story is, because she's making all these groundbreaking discoveries about chimps and everything. But it's what she was never planning to becoming a social issue icon. The goal was just to live in the forest. And when I say she lived in the forest, she legitimately lived in the forest. Her house in Tanzania is still there within the rainforest. She felt that's where she was most connected to her spirituality. And we've talked about it in the show all the time, how important it is to be outside. Now imagine being outside in the rainforest, surrounded by all of these things. But this is where her grit kind of starts to come into play, because She was not widely accepted into this scientific role because she didn't have the schooling. She didn't have the background. She didn't have the family background. She didn't have any of it. She just had a gift, and she was using that gift. So scientists were kind of mocking her because, everything is a number to a scientist, and everything has to be calculated. Everything has to be defined. But that's where Jane was different. The number one thing that kept her going was hope. And hope was something that scientists could never put into words. You can't define hope with a discovery, but she had it. And so one of the small things she was doing to work with these chimpanzees was, instead of just giving them numbers, she gave them names. Then she's building relationships with them. They're recognizing her. As she moves into when she's working on the social issues or working on getting chimpanzees out of research departments, getting them out of bad zoos all across Africa. She was in a research department where they were studying chimpanzees, and she was heartbroken by what she saw in front of her. It was this old chimpanzee. I think he was, I forget exactly how old he was, but because of how they were treating him and the conditions, he had no hair. He had nothing. He was skinny. He didn't even look like a chimp. And she started crying through her mask. And the chimpanzee reached out and wiped the tear from her eye. That is the level of gift that we're talking about, that she was that she had and that she was giving to the world. And the more she started traveling, the more she started to realize that there was a massive issue all throughout Africa with these chimpanzees and some of the conditions that they were living in. And this is one of the things I love about her. She went after two different groups of people. She went after very high political figures, people in political power. Sorry. Thanks for sticking with me as I jumble through my words. And kids. So one of the programs she did was called Roots and Shoots. That one started a little bit later in 1991, but today it's in over 65 countries and empowers young people to create projects that help animals, people, and the environment. The coolest thing about this, and something that a lot of these organizations could take from, was that it's all about community-based action. So teaching these people why it's important, why it benefits them, and not just the people they're helping. It's benefiting the whole community if you're taking care of these animals, taking care of the environment, taking care of all these different things. Everybody benefits from it. Now, what I noticed when I'm watching the documentary in this Roots and Shoots, one, the way these kids talk about her and love her, they are literally considering her Mother Nature. Now remember, Jane is from Great Britain. She's British. She lived a bunch of her life in Tanzania, but this is so cool to me. She is pulling up to villages all throughout Africa, all different countries, in the middle of these rainforests, in the middle of the jungle, going across all these different, country lines, going into dangerous places, and she is welcomed by every single one of them. And to see these people of all different cultures, eyes light up when they see her, you can see the hope in these kids' eyes that they have from seeing her. And it's incredible because these kids are truly buying into the fact that they can make a difference in this world. And I would argue that in the US, at least, we don't have those influences as much in our neighborhoods, in our schools. That's like, hey, if you guys all work together and improve this community, it will impact the whole entire world. And she was able to do that in over 65 countries. And I think a reason why a lot of this speaks to me is my uncle. He passed away during COVID, and he had a similar impact. He was a teacher, but he taught all across the world, and we still get messages to this day thanking us for Uncle Bob's life and the impact he had on these kids in Taiwan, in New York, in Peru, all over the world. And Dr. Jane Goodall is that also. But it's really cool. She does there's one of these Roots and Shoots programs in Europe, and Prince Harry came and spoke to the kids, but these were more high school age, and you could just tell the fire that she lit in them, and it's inspiring to see. So that's kind of how she poured into the younger crowd. Now, this is something that every single adult, every single politician, every single person that is trying to gain influence or gain power or make change, I shouldn't even say gain power, to make a change, Jane gives the blueprint on how to do it, because nowadays we can't even talk to an enemy or somebody that believes something that is opposite of what we believe, or they work in an industry that's separate. And I'm pulling it up right now because she has a great quote about working with the people on the opposition. If you want to make a change, you have to be friends with the bad guys and then turn them into good guys. So the example I have for you from Jane's life is there was all these chimps that were being horribly taken care of in a zoo. And also in this area of Africa, there was Conoco gas. So, massive gas and oil company, and oil companies and people that love the environment usually do not mesh well. And this is right as she's starting her move into the social movements. And she goes and she sits down with the head of Conoco. And then people are up in arms on her side. They're saying, why are you sitting down with these evil oil people? This is ridiculous. You're a fraud. You're this. And what happens? She sits down. She has the conversation. She doesn't yell at the guy and tell him he's an idiot. She tells him, hey, this is the best way to improve this environment. I know you guys are going to drill, but if you're going to do it, you need to pour back to the community. And I need you guys to build a sanctuary for these chimps in this land that you are looking for oil. And they ultimately they come up with a deal. Now, think about that trade-off. I would say it was worth it because the goal was to save those chimps, and now they have massive, almost a perfect setup for it. To show you even more the reach of her impact, the U.S. Secretary of State, James Baker, he was a massive hunter, loved going on the big game hunting, the whole thing, big outdoorsman, and he's seeing what Jane is doing, and he kind of reaches out and is like, hey, I think we might have a lot more in common than you may think. Let's sit down and talk. So they sit down and talk. They start to realize they do have a ton of things in common. And, hunting is good for the conservation of some of these animals as well, even though in Africa, a lot of people, like with these chimps, are hunting for the wrong reasons. But he impacted the Secretary of State from the U.S. so much that when she was going on her runs throughout Africa trying to save these chimps, he was reaching out to all of the different embassies to get her access, to get her a place to stay, to get her funding, to get her everything she needed to be successful in this space. And there is no reason for the U.S., for the Secretary of State from the U.S. to be helping this British girl who spent most of her time in Tanzania looking at chimps. That is the level of impact I'm talking about that she has. And it's sitting with these people that you would never expect her to sit with, or people from these sides to sit with. And that's what we've lost. The climate activists, they view oil and gas as the enemy. Oil and gas people view green energy as the enemy. And it drives me insane because the politicians, they run on either or, and it should be running on and, because there's no reason you can't have both. Everybody wants to keep the environment safe. Everybody wants to make money. But not everybody wants to have a conversation. And that's what Jane was able to do. She was able to have a conversation. And that was the biggest takeaway from me from this whole documentary, from her life. It was her willingness to sit down with people who didn't believe in the same things as her, and then convince them or show them her side of the argument, to which they realized, oh, wait, I actually do align with that. And the reason it was effective is because she wasn't yelling at them, telling them how dumb they were, how wrong they were, and, everything under the moon about why she's an idiot. And that's all that happens nowadays for these politicians. And it's mind-numbing. It would be so easy to be successful in this world if you took the Jane approach. I'm speaking about a woman who didn't go to college, didn't have background in science, no biology degree, none of that. I'm speaking about a woman who did this all in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, up until her last days. She overcame the hurdles of being a woman in that field at that time. She overcame the hurdles of working with oil and gas. She overcame the hurdles of the attacks that people on her side were throwing at her for sitting at the table with the oil and gas companies and the big politicians and everything. But she made it happen. She changed this world. She changed the trajectory of so many people's lives, and it is one of the most commendable lives anybody has ever lived. And none of it was easy for her, guys. In 1975, her research center, people were kidnapped from, outsiders in Tanzania that came in and wanted whatever. Four kids were kidnapped, one of them out of her tent that she was staying in, and that rattled her. She was in the face of the fire, all because she was out there fighting for good, fighting for the betterment of this earth that we live on. Hope is what enables us to keep going in the face of adversity. Without hope, all is lost. And that is the message that people need to hear, man, because we've been talking about it the last 2 weeks, but it seems like we're in this hopeless place, but it's not, because we have an opportunity to make an impact. Every single day, we make a difference. It's up to us if it's positive or negative. If you want to go the environmental route, something as simple as, are you recycling? Did you buy a hybrid car? Whatever it is, daily actions, and it will bring change. She is living proof of it. There was just a report from NASA or somebody about the ozone layer in the atmosphere, like actually reversing it was, going away or whatever it was, but it's going back to where it's strengthening and protecting the earth again. Like these things, it's possible. It's important to believe it's possible. It's important to take the actions and show people that's possible. And there's a lot to take from her life, but I gotta believe the number one thing to take from it is being willing to sit down at the table with somebody that disagrees with you and being able to come up with a solution to the problem that you're doing. And that's where we're getting on. People are selling us hope, and that's it. Every 4 years we get sold hope. Every 2 years we get sold hope. Every day we might even be getting sold hope on TV by the people that are decision makers. And it's just, that's it. That's all it is hope. Jane's life was hope with action, hope with a plan, and that's what we do. I say all those people are the decision makers, and they are at a large scale, but we are also decision makers. We have every single day hundreds of decisions in front of us that are either putting us towards the person we want to be or the person that we don't want to be. And you got to be mindful of those decisions you're making, of those small decisions you're making, because it has an impact, and it can impact the world. Her story should be encouraging to everybody, no matter where you're from, about the impact that you can have. She is referred to as Mother Nature by tribes in Africa, and she's from the UK. She's being given medals by the US, by the United Nations, by all of these things because of her passion for saving these chimps, for getting level with these animals, for conservation, for all of these things. She is no different than any one of us. She just makes those small decisions every single day to maximize her time here. And I cannot thank her family. She's got grandkids out there that are carrying on, all of her different foundations and the roots and shoots. And I can't wait to see what they're able to accomplish. Even in the absence of her, she left a legacy that's going to change the world forever. She changed the world forever. She's inspired the next generation to change the world forever. It's incredible. And I feel like maybe I've been rambling, but I feel like it's worth it. Jane is unreal. I want to make sure I didn't miss any of these big things. So let me scroll through my notes real quick. This is a great quote, honestly. Only if we understand can we care. Only if we care will we help. And only if we help shall they be saved. And that was for the empathy for animals, but also, oh my gosh, that's right. Another one of her most amazing achievements. The NIH which is the National Institutes of Health, they were experimenting with vaccines in chimps because they believed, chimps were so similar to humans, which they are in a lot of ways. But when Jane went in there and she saw the conditions they were in and the stress they were under, it was all twisted. And instead of yelling at all of these scientists, because trust me, they laughed at her as she was in there communicating with the chimps, they were thought this is a whole load of crap. But the more she explained to them why none of this made sense, the more they realized they needed to change it. And she literally got them to shut down chimp testing because after research, after more research, after the correct research, they realized that chimps are some of the worst test subjects when it comes to vaccines and if they would work in humans. One of the last animals you'd want to use are chimps for multiple reasons. Their immune systems, their cellular makeup, all of these things. But these people had no idea and they're treating them horribly. So she helps them out there. She contributes something to them. Hey, if you guys want to be more efficient, this is what you need to do. This is the direction you need to look. Now, in return, you guys need to build a sanctuary for these chimps that they can live out the rest of their lives in a good way. And so that's why we have the sanctuary down in Louisiana, because she forced them to get this piece of land and you go check it out. And she calls it an almost perfect sanctuary for these chimpanzees. She's changing things at the national level, at the state level, at the local level, at the country level, wherever, at the international level. She changed things everywhere. Some of the other things that she was able to accomplish, she launched TA Care, it's community centered conservation. They've planted almost 1 million trees. Villages are involved in protecting the land. They've taught these villages land management, showing them why it's important to look out for these animals for the benefit of themselves and for the animals, and why everything is connected in nature and always has been. We got to look out for the animals and it will benefit us more than we may know. She's built schools. Something awesome she's done is she created like a microcredit program where, they're giving like loans out to these women that want to go into these fields. And the awesome stat is 95% of those credits are paid back, within the first 5 years or whatever it is. She's a United Nations Messenger of Peace. She got awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Templeton Prize. And luckily for us, she started a podcast during COVID called the Hopecast, where she says, hope isn't naive. Hope is what makes us act. Without hope, we give up. She brought on guests from authors to researchers to scientists and pretty much asks people and has conversations with people what hope is to them. And luckily for us, we have those, even now that she's passed, we have those conversations for the rest of our lives. We get to look back at Dr. Jane Goodall's life. And you cannot ask for a better example of so many things: discipline, authenticity, resilience, generosity, compassion, drive, all of these things that you would describe a great person Dr. Jane Goodall had. So thank you, Dr. Jane Goodall, for everything you did. Thank you to your family. Thank you to everybody that helped her along the way. You have one of the most inspiring stories of all time. And I can't wait to continue to learn about you and hopefully maybe even talk to the next Jane Goodall on this show one time, because I have no doubt there's a whole generation of them coming up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Make It to Midnight. I hope it inspired you to show you that you can make a difference in this world. You got to start by making a difference in your immediate community, in your friendship circles, but it's possible, and you got to hold on to that hope, and you got to attach action to that hope. But thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, do all the things, and most importantly, keep making it to midnight, because Dr. Jane Goodall said it. We need you here. You're important. You bring something that we need. Everything's connected. We can't do things without each other, so we need you, and we'll see you guys next week.